always remember you never know who you're meeting or working with, what their role is going to be the next time you meet them.
You are now tuned into the Misi Muse Unplugged, a pop-up podcast variety show helping consultants along their journey to greatness with your host, management consultant, author and blogger, Christy Lindor.
Hey, my go-getters. Welcome to the Misi Muse Unplugged podcast show. I'm your host, Christy Lindor. Super excited to be bringing you episode 31. And today we're actually going to be doing an Ask Me Anything or AMA interview. And if this is your first time tuning in, AMAs are when I have the wonderful opportunity to connect with either seasoned or former consultants, and they give you advice. Today's guest, we've got Tanya Stevenson. A little bit about Tanya. She's actually a seasoned independent consultant. She's the founder of Stand Up and Deliver Consultancy. She's also an author and a speaker. And in our episode today, she actually shares a little bit about her career journey as an independent consultant. And go-getters, I think you're going to really enjoy today's conversation. Tanya does, a really great job of dropping some real-world knowledge and gems that I think will really help round out as you continue on your journey to greatness in 2018. And for today's career dilemma, I actually had several mentees reach out to me. They're attending their first industry conference, and they were asking, how to really maximize their time at these types of events. So both Tanya and I share our insights and our experience of attending industry conferences and how you can really, take advantage of those opportunities. It's a very informative discussion. I hope you will enjoy. Also today, go-getters, I've actually been getting a lot of questions about my book, The Misi Muse. So I wanted to take a moment to address a couple of them before we get started with today's interview. So one of the questions I continue to get is, when is the book officially going to be published? It's a really great question. I've been going through the publishing process, but as of right now, my book is scheduled to be published February 20th. And by definition of published, that means that if you were to go onto Amazon.com on February 20th, you can not only order the book, it'll actually be shipped to you. So published is really kind of the technical term of when the book is available for mass distribution. So again, the book will be published February 20th. Another question I've gotten before is the book available for pre-order? And the short answer is yes. And so, go-getters, if you go to my website, misimuse.com, I'll go ahead and post a link out there for you to be able to pre-order the book if you'd like. Another question that I've gotten is, when is the book going to be available on common or popular sites such as Amazon or barnesandnobles.com? So we are in the process of setting up the pre-order pages, and it's going through kind of all these different approvals. So go-getters, as soon as the book is available on all the various different types of popular book site outlets, we'll definitely let you know. But if you want to today, you can definitely go to the link on my website and be able to pre-order it from my publishing team. Another question I've gotten is, what formats are the book going to be available? So upon publishing, the book is going to be available in both a paperback format as well as a ebook or Kindle format. So we're going to be publishing with those three formats. And the next question I've gotten is there going to be an audio version? And yes, there will be an audio version. I'm actually going to take a little bit more time to publish the audio book version. So that's probably going to be a little later this year, go-getters, most likely in the summer or fall timeframe. But I'll definitely keep you posted on when the audio book will be available. And the last question that I've been getting a lot the last couple of weeks is, am I going on tour? So yes and no. So I've started the virtual book tour, and virtual book tour meaning that I have been doing a number of different podcast interviews, doing guest blogging on different websites, doing interviews online with magazines. And that's really going to be the extent of it at this particular point. I do have a couple of in-person events. So I do have a book launch party, Go-Getters. I'll post information about that as well for you to check that out. You're definitely invited. It's January 25th from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, I'll post all that. You can be anywhere in the world and you'll be able to stream it. We're going to make sure that we set up for all my Go-Getters worldwide to take part in the book launch party. In addition to that, I do have several in-person book signing events underway that's going to be happening between the March through April timeframe. And as we kind of finalize information and dates, I'll definitely share that with you in the future. So most of my book tour events are virtual, but the ones that are in person, we'll make sure we keep you posted. And if you want to learn more about the book, more about the book tours and all types of other information, you can go ahead and check out my new book website, and that's mecemuse.us, and that's MECE Muse, MUSE.us. And the podcast site has not changed. It's the same, mecemuse.com. So with that, let's get started. I have the utmost pleasure of introducing Tanya Stevenson to the show. Tanya, thank you for joining us today on the MECE Muse Unplugged. How are you doing?
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So before we get started, if you can take a moment to introduce yourself to the go-getters of the MECE Muse Unplugged.
Sure. So I'm Tanya Stevenson. I'm the founder of Stand and Deliver, Inc. I'm declared as an independent management consultant specializing in organization change management. And I've been doing that for 10 years. And I'm very grateful to have built a business that has stand the test of time regardless of the economy. It hasn't always been that easy. 10 years ago, I often experienced the feast and famine that consultants can experience, especially independents, not knowing where the money is going to be coming in or my next contract. Of course, that adds a bit of stress with my relationship with the most important person in my life, which is my husband, and not, having to work with my clients to ensure that my value in the market is recognized and rewarded appropriately. But I'm really happy to be here today, 10 years later, on your show, hoping I'm going to be providing some value to your audience and some of the people who might be in a similar place.
Kudos to you, Tanya. I give you kudos because, just being in consulting for the last, 15 years or so, the market has really been very interesting. And I cannot imagine.
I wanted the consulting to reply. Interesting.
Yes, it has. Well, it has. It's been quite the adventure in the market, and to see the kind of the contract of the industry. And I can't imagine as an independent consultant how much you must feel that, that rubber to road field. So I give you kudos. I think it takes a certain level of grit to really be able to embrace that journey as an independent consultant. So I want to kind of go to that independent consultant thing, but before we do that, I want to take a step back, and I would love to hear kind of how you decided to go into consulting. I know you mentioned you're an org change management consultant, my specialty, so we're definitely kindred spirits for sure. But maybe give us a little bit about how you decided to go into the profession.
Sure. I kind of come to it from a different direction than I think some of my peers. I had the great fortune of actually starting my career in a startup company, which was fabulous, intense, hard, like you said, grit experience. And I grew very quickly into an operational role of managing not only customer service for over 900,000 customers, but 4 departments all before I was 30. So I have that kind of entrepreneur nature in that due to that beginning. But what I was often doing is kind of solving the problems for the organization continuously. So I never actually would ever consider myself as one of those long-term management leaders. I was always solving problems, going to the next thing. And so I would really call myself as an internal consultant, because it didn't matter what we needed. We needed a new billing system. We needed a new telecom system. We needed a new department. We needed to shut down a department. We merged with another company. We divested. It was really quite a radical education system that you don't get when you're in school. And so kind of having that hard knocks beginning really lent to quite a hard or strong, I would say, foundation. And then when I looked around and said, well, I want to grow my career and I want more experience and more, what I would say adventures and more problems to solve, I looked around and I saw that it wasn't growing my career up a chain of command that was going to give me that. And I decided I really, really enjoy the project environment. So I looked around and I said, well, who does that? And the very people I was hiring did that. And so the very people that was helping me solve my problems, consultants, is I looked at them and said, hey, how do you do this? How did you do this? How did you get into this? How would I do that? And the very people who were helping me solve my company problems actually helped me solve my career problems. And that's how I got started, as I watched them and figured out how would I lay it out so that when I broke away 10 years to go independent, I was ready to do that.
That's such a very interesting story, Tanya. As you said it, I'm thinking, as an independent consultant, I would assume there's a lot of parallels with a startup company environment. Since you've had that experience firsthand, maybe you can share with the go-getters, like, what would be some really key differences between going to a startup company and kind of going through that kind of journey versus like the independent consulting?
I think some of the differences in that was when I started my independent side, I had a lot more conscious direction I was going. And I still made a ton of mistakes, but I had a much more conscious decision around that. When you're doing a startup company, though, there is a lot of burning problems you're trying to solve. Like, for example, it's funny today. Like today, I look at some of my clients, and they're managing budgets to if I'm within 100,000, I'm happy. Down to like maybe 20,000. When you do a startup company, you're managing your budgets to $50. So you're doing with a lot less, and you're doing a heck of a lot more with that. When I had 900,000 customers, I only had, I believe, 18 people in my call center. One of my vendors at the time, one of my vendors was AT&T. They had 55 people in their call center. So your scale is so much different in a startup company. Now take that and go into independent. Now I'm a company of one, and I have to do everything myself. And so in some ways, the difference with the startup company is at least I still had people, I still had teams, I was still able to hire, I was still able to fire, I was still able to build teams. Now I'm trying to do everything with myself. And so productivity is even more essential. So it's funny how those kind of difference in there. Plus, I had leaders working with me in those startup companies. We were trying to chew out these problems together and find solutions to these problems together. As an independent consultant, there's times where you're incredibly lonely. You don't have a lot of peers or joint leaders that you're leaning on. You're leaning on other independent consultants, other community areas, trying to help solve some of your own problems.
Yeah. What you just touched on, Tanya, about kind of the loneliness of consulting. I hear that so much. And it's funny, I hear it from independent consultants, but I also actually hear it from, consultants that work at a specific firm. I think that, in terms of, I feel like that topic alone is like, I could do a whole episode on just the loneliness of because not a lot of people kind of sometimes understand the lifestyle. And so even if, you have people around you that do the same type of work, if they're not part of your social circle sometimes really they don't really understand what you're going through.
Yeah, I think I think I have to be really fair to that topic, is saying one of the hesitations of me becoming an independent consultant versus even a consultant with a firm is even people from the firms I work beside. Some of them were smaller boutique and some of them were, the big four. But, nobody ever, that was always what got brought up, is say, do you really want to go down this path? Because it's not, even if you work for a big four, it's still lonely. And now you're going to be an independent, which is even going to be possibly lonelier. So Are you prepared for that? And coming from a background of counseling, because my background is sociology and psychology, and coming from a background also where I'm a big believer in planning to succeed, not failing to plan and then failing, I kind of had to really step back and go, okay, project manager, how are you going to mitigate these risks? How are you going to set this stuff up so you're not completely, running on empty all the time and you have no one there near you? It didn't always work out, as in a project environment. You can plan all your risks you want with all your mitigations you want, and it doesn't go to plan, but at least you had something to fall upon, right?
Right. So true. So true. I do an episode just on project management because I feel like that's such an important part of being a great consultant.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
So I'm glad that you tee that up. Just kind of your background, Tanya. So you kind of went from, you're kind of in the startup environment. You've been in a very, what I think is a very volatile kind of marketplace. It's been in the last decade or so, and you've done well for yourself as an independent consultant. What would be your top 3 kind of pieces of advice that you would, give someone that's maybe new to the profession? They may be thinking about joining a firm or kind of striking it out on their own. Like, what would be kind of some of the top things you'd share with them as advice?
So from my experience of both working for large companies, both oil and gas and utilities, I've said this actually to employees who are going to stay in companies, and I've said this to consultants, I've said this to independent consultants. You can never go wrong, first and foremost, having a great foundation in great project management and BA experience. Like, you don't have to become a specialist in it, but you better have a good understanding and a respect for a project environment, because no matter what you're doing, eventually something is going to show up in your wheelhouse where you're going to have to be part of a project because somebody's going to be making a change somewhere. That's my first piece. My second piece is always remember, you never know who you're meeting or working with, what their role is going to be the next time you meet them. So I remember. I love that. Yeah. Like, I worked with somebody, and somebody was, a V-suite VP level. Next time I meet them, they're my consultant. So one time they're my boss, one time I'm their boss, maybe, right? And that's happened to me. One time I was the boss, the next time I'm on the staff. So you never know who you're going to be meeting in your network, who and what your roles are going to play like with each other later in life. So respect everybody around you, because you just don't know what the circumstances are going to be like in the future. And don't take it for granted that you know, because you don't. And the other thing is to be I'm tossing between 2. So maybe, I don't know if you could let me squeeze in a 4th.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my third one was always, as a consultant, be very value driven. I cannot express enough about always providing value to the people around you in your network. It can be a potential client. It could be the person you're working with on the team at your client. It could be the person who's working for you. Like, how do you make this a mutual exchange so that everybody is walking away with something? And then my last one, my squeeze in one was, and you kind of alluded to this, is that grit, that resilience. You got to find ways to really build that up, because the market, the industry, the clients, it's always changing. You got to be able to bounce around and be really able to be flexible around that.
All great advice. I so love, you don't know, where this person will be the next time you meet them. I think I'm going to use that line, Tanya, because it's the story of my life. It's so funny. You meet people and you're so right. I've seen kind of ironies as well. And it's pretty remarkable. So spot on advice as well.
If I can share one story just to try that.
Yeah.
I remember teaching a class. I just stopped doing it in the last couple of years, but I used to teach project management at the universities, both the universities in my local city. And so a student who is in there, so I'm the teacher, they're the student. And I'll tell you, a year and a half, I think it was 2 years later, the student is now my client. So you don't know how your roles are going to be reversing around, right?
Right. No, so that's a great story. But it shows the testament of being respectful for everyone. And I there's a saying that I actually love, and I always share it with people when they get super excited about their successes. I'm like, yes, celebrate your successes, but understand that success is not final. Yeah. It's so true. Like, yes, absolutely. I'm all about celebrating, but at the same time, you can't stop there. It's kind of it actually should just give you momentum to continue on. And in this world, you can't stop. You have to kind of keep going and knowing that. And on the flip side, failure is not fleeting as well. So true. So given, being independent, one question that I hear, people that may be considering that, in a crossroads, deciding if that's where they want to head is, how do you really get client work as an independent consultant? So maybe, Tanya, you can share with us, what are some of the ways that you're able to get client work from your network, or just kind of from in general through kind of interactions with different people? Maybe you can share a little bit of that.
Sure. I mean, I think we've all heard this. I mean, you all heard the blanket statement, your network, right? Or referrals. But it really, for me, when I first started out, I'll be honest, even actually when I first started out, I got my first contract through a small firm who set it all up. And before I showed up, the firm I was working through and the client both collapsed. So I left my paid, employee, great role running a project management office. It was a ton of fun. Decided to make this breakaway. And before I even started, I had lined everything up through another firm they were my vendor. So it was in my network. So it was a referral. They knew what I was like. They really want to put me in front of their client, and everything just fell apart. So I didn't do my homework like I probably needed to as much as I should have. But I thank God for my network of respect, because another vendor that I had worked for had heard about my plight, and they wanted to actually put me in front of one of their clients, a large oil and gas transporting company as well. So I was really fortunate that came in that way. And to be honest, from there on, that's how it really has worked for me, is because of my desire to always provide value and connect with my network. I just always stayed top of mind with both third-party vendors, directly with the leaders that I had worked beside in my industries when I was a leader. And I stayed in contact with other consultants who provided me services. And because we worked so well together when I was their client, they were more than happy to refer me on to their clients when they had an opportunity. And that is pretty well for 10 years. That is exactly how I've gotten my work again and again and again.
That's great. Great advice. One thing maybe you can share, has there ever been anything that ever surprised you or that you learned about tapping your network to really kind of seek out new business? Anything you want to share?
Sometimes I've actually gotten work. It's not been direct from people I've actually met directly, or I had directly on my phone. I'm going to date myself on my Rolodex. I swear I want to bring that back. Actually, I really want one of those because I kind of miss how those worked. But anyway,
you said that, and I just was having a conversation earlier this morning about BlackBerry. Yeah, and I'm like, just like you, I'm like, I was having this conversation with this person, and they're like a hardcore Apple fan. I know this is such a random that I have to share this. Like, I was like, I really want my BlackBerry back. Like, I miss the keys. I miss everything about my BlackBerry.
Okay. All right. You want to be dating? Palm Pilot.
Oh.
Oh. Right?
Oh my gosh. I'm like,
been in this for a while. They're gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I can talk about the things I miss. That's a whole other episode all in itself. But that was so random, but I had to share that story.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So the real surprising thing is today, in this digital age, what I do a lot with my network to stay top of mind is I send them a lot of time digital, but I do occasionally I send gifts to my clients, or when I leave behind a book, or I send articles, because I'm always scraping the world of content for usable stuff for not just myself, but my clients. And I'll find these magazine, I'll send them the actual physical magazine, or I'll send them clippings and stuff. And I had one client come to me through that was actually 3 people removed. And they got the attention because the third person receiving this had gotten it from a trusted person in their network who got it from somebody else in my network, right? So there's this weird connection. Remember when LinkedIn used to have the whole, how close are you connected, or they still do, right? I think. It was kind of like that kind of scenario, which really made me believe really the world is not 6 degrees of separation. It's down to 3. And this person, because of this trusted relationship through these multiple individuals, had kind of followed back through the chain to get to me. And that's how I got a contract. It was very surprising, very rewarding to say, wow, this gift here got passed on to there, which landed with this other person who they were so impressed by the whole string of value there that they end up coming back to hire me. So it was like, yeah, that was surprising. And if anything, just reconfirming that approach, it is valuable and it works for everybody in that string.
You mentioned LinkedIn and to go-getters, you're hearing this, you're thinking about going into consulting, whether it's independent or otherwise, Get on LinkedIn.
Oh my God, I cannot say enough.
Yes, get on LinkedIn. Just like you love your Facebooks and your Instagrams and your Snapchat, get on LinkedIn. It is like the social network for professionals, for sure.
It is. Absolutely. And I was an early adopter on there. So my LinkedIn profile is just like, it's LinkedIn and then it's like / Tanya Stevenson. So I'm a big believer. So I'm glad you're like me, Christy, and you're advocating for it because there's nothing else out there like it.
I definitely agree. One last question before I pivot and talk about today's career question. I'm part of your Facebook group, the Black Sheep Consulting. You put a lot of really great content out there that I pick up and I really enjoy. I would love for you to kind of share with the go-getters a little bit about the Facebook group, especially if they're interested, as newbie consultants. Sure.
So I guess I should first mention, why did I even start one? Because it's been really difficult as we started this conversation with. It can be a lonely career choice as in a firm or as an independent or in a boutique. It can be lonely. So I was actually doing a bunch of work and research trying to go, okay, is there other groups out there that I can be contributing to and I can be getting value from as well? And there aren't very many. And so what I decided to do is I thought, okay, well, I'll take this chance because I'm not a huge Facebook person, but I thought this is a better social medium because this isn't about finding a job. This is about how do we help each other. And I called it Black Sheep Consultants because I was really getting focused on saying, well, I really wanted to see a community, to create a community where it was driven more about providing the value to their clients. And how do we as consultants bring the best of ourselves to that experience on both sides? And I really believe in the mindful approach to business and craft and life. So I thought, okay, how do I attract like-minded people? Black Sheep Consultants in my mind, people who are willing to hold themselves accountable for their actions and decisions, and said, okay, let's go down let's try this Facebook group and see who we can attract and see if we can stir up some interesting conversation.
Today's episode is brought to you on behalf of the Misi Muse, 100+ selected practices, unwritten rules and habits of great consultants, a book by Christy Lindor. Written in the voice of a mentor, the Misi Muse provides insights on the unwritten rules of great consultants, a perfect read for new or aspiring consultants. Christy dives into her 15+ years of consulting experience while sharing interviews and anecdotes from over 50 consulting partners and leaders that represents thought leadership from 80% of the top 10 consulting firms in the world. Pre-sale begins shortly. Sign up at www.misimuse.com.
Kind of like you, Tanya, I'm not really like a big Facebook person, but every time I log on there and I come across the post, I feel like I always take a key nugget away. So yeah, so go-getters, I definitely would, definitely recommend joining Tanya's Black Sheep Consultant Facebook group and having that safe space. As you mentioned, I think is so critical, and there are not a lot of outlets like that. So I think it's pretty unique for sure. Yeah. So, one thing I wanted to kind of pivot to for the career question I mentioned earlier, I have a couple of mentees they're attending, industry conferences for the first time. And, they kind of want to get a little bit more information on like how to really maximize their time at any industry conferences. So I would think, Tanya, you are an experienced, seasoned consultant. I'm sure you've done many of conferences. I would love to hear your thoughts on ways you think that people should consider, really maximizing their time at industries. What are some of the top things that they should kind of consider as they prepare for that?
I love conferences, but I have to admit, you could spend a ton of money on those. And there's been a couple I've come into and I'm like, oh my God, like I got nothing out of that, right? Because I just showed up as a student. And I thought, okay, let's rethink this and go, how can I get the best bang for my buck, right? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah.
There's actually, to me, there are 3 phases of a conference. There is actually, how do you prepare for one? What do you do during it? And actually there's the post-event as well. So when you get started and you're finding that conference, whatever that is for your craft or your industry or whichever, the real thing you want to make sure is, are you ready to show up there at your best? And so to make that a little easier, I always say, like, have your elevator speech, for lack of a better word, ready to go. So my name is, I'm an owner of, I provide so-and-so services or products, and I'm currently focused on. So kind of have in mind when you show up there, what are you looking for? Like, are you just looking just to hang out and have, a party? Or are you actually there to solve some kind of problem for either yourself or your clients or your company? Like, have a bit of a goal when you're showing up there. And then when you're doing that, also make sure that you really take a look at who's going to be speaking and go, is there anybody in particular here I want to be speaking to myself? Like, is there somebody there that I want to be following up with? Is there a speaker there that I want to be chatting with directly? Those kind of ideas. And so if you have that kind of prepared, that's very helpful. I'm also a big believer, just like LinkedIn is the place to go. I'm actually a big believer still in the old style, have some business cards on you that you can write notes on so that you can kind of like have that interaction with people that you meet. And that's kind of the pre-prep. So prepare for the conference. During the conference, it's probably a good idea to make sure, and I'm sure we've heard this, but seriously, like, put your phone away, put it on vibrate, whatever it is, and be present there. And be present with the people you're meeting. Show up early for it so you have an opportunity to network with people and be comfortable and get familiar with the space and all that. And make sure that you're going to find this weird, but I remember when I was at one of these events and I was sitting back kind of watching because I'm a people watcher. I do sociology and psych. This is what I do. And I watched this group come in and they just were incredibly rude to the serving staff, the coat check people. And it was interesting because nobody wanted to talk to them after they walked into the room. So I also remind people, be really polite wherever you go and be very respectful because people are watching and you might have created yourself a brand that you might not even realize as you walked in the door. And during that event, you want to make sure that you're ready to be introduced, you're comfortable, you're dressed for the part, which everybody knows about, and you have your questions ready. And so when you meet people during that event, so not only are you going to learn while you're at that event, but you're going to be able to talk to people and they're going to ask who you are and you're going to go, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm focused on. And maybe they may or may not be able to help you. And then that's what you also ask of other people. Who are you? What do you do? Is there something, you find out what they're focused on and maybe there's a way that you can help them. So that's that value-driven piece. And the thing is, be authentic about that. If you can really help somebody, give them your card, put a note on there saying, I think I can help you with this. And here's that opportunity to connect with that person and be memorable, offer to be of assistance to them. Learn what you can. If there's a speaker you want to catch, see if you can get into any of the VIP or speaker events and follow up with them, doing the same thing, being prepared. And then during the post-event, follow up on your commitments. If you said you're going to help somebody and you said, hey, I'm going to call you in 2 weeks, call them in 2 weeks. If they wanted to talk to you, then they'll call you and be prepared to give them the help that you can. That is how I have built a network and a reputation that has fed my business so well for 10 years.
I think that was extremely helpful, Tanya, in terms of the ways that you've done that. So go-getters, definitely kind of jot this down and kind of create I call it a blueprint of how to connect on, with conferences. Yes. I'm going to add a couple more things just to kind of round out just from my experiences that I can share as well. And everything you just said was like spot on. So I'm going to just add a couple more things. So I know for me, in addition to what the things that Tanya mentioned, I kind of have like 3 objectives of a conference. And again, maybe it's just kind of where I am in my career. I think there's part of that too, right? So depending on where you are, what phase of your career, people will have different objectives depending on that time. So I'm going to share kind of mine's where I'm at today. I definitely am always looking for, objective 1 is to gain visibility. And for me, gaining visibility means, are there opportunities for me to be part of the conversation? Yes. And when I say part of the conversation, is there a potential way that I can speak? Can I share maybe a case study of some work that I've done in the past and can, showcase my firm? Can I contribute? Sometimes I've been in conferences, not that I've been speaking at them, but I may have been able to contribute through, writing a white paper or providing some sort of thought leadership that I co-author. Especially in my younger days as a consultant, I did a lot of co-authoring of conferences. I was a little bit more shy. I was very introvert, so I didn't want to talk publicly, but I did make sure that I share, a little bit of my ideas and assertions were part of the conversation. So I think gaining visibility is kind of one piece. To your point around preparing, what I found in the last couple of years, social media is really amazing in that you can actually start to connect with people that are going to be at the conference, either speaking or going to be attending it before you even go. So one of the things that I've been doing recently, when I know I'm going to be attending something, I tweet that, or I put it out on my Instagram or my LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm going to, such and such conference, who's in? And you'd be surprised, like the number of people that reach out, either, from that message you put out there, it's like, hey, I'm going. And then you kind of start making connections with people before you even show up.
Tactic's a great one. I love that one.
Yeah, I've actually even, I've been able to do that even with conference, people that are putting it on. So people who are putting on the actual event, I've done tweets and done certain things. And then I've been able to connect with them and kind of, to your point, start to kind of get the insider scoop on who's going to be there, what's happening. So don't underestimate the power of social media in the preparation plan. It really leads to like my objective too, which is making connections. And I think you said that really nicely, Tanya. I know for me, because, it feels like conferences, and I'm sure you feel this too, Tanya. It feels like you're always running out of time, right? You feel so stretched, And so when I realized that, I said, okay, I try to create like a multi-dimension of different people I want to meet. And I say, okay, of all these people, who are the top 5 that I absolutely need to either give them my business card? I need to make sure that we make some type of connection. There's like 5. Instead of trying to connect with everyone, let me try to kind of create quality interactions. And sometimes it's also been where I connect with someone I haven't seen in a while. And I'm like, I really want to strengthen an existing relationship as well. So I think the connections is definitely big. And then the last thing I've done with conferences that has actually worked out for me and my brand building is knowledge sharing. So when I go to conferences now, it's not just, like taking it all in. And sometimes you go to conferences and you learn so much and then you put it away and you don't use it. And so what I've gotten into the habit of doing now, I actually write blog posts. So I may write a blog post, or I kind of document it and I put it in like a Google Doc and I share it with people, or I do a presentation, or I do something with it. So even if I'm not using it, the information like right that moment, it becomes part of my toolkit in some way. And, I become known for X, right? Because I shared that information. So for example, the last conference or summit, I should say, I went to was in May. I went to a podcast summit. And I was able to take all the notes that I took in that. I created 2-3 blog posts. I've shared it with like at least 50 or 60 people now. And that is actually, I've actually seen that circular. I've seen a couple people kind of launch their podcast just from that and help create kind of like you were saying earlier, the value add. So those are kind of just some additional thoughts that I know that I use that's worked. And I don't go to a lot of conferences now. I want to do so more in the future, but I mean, for the ones that I have done, those are kind of the things that I've done.
Oh, I love those additions. Now you're stimulating me to go, maybe, do I have another article I should be putting on my blog now? I got a couple around conferences, but those are some great 4 additional highlights.
But see, the thing is, it goes back to the objectives, right? So, you're going to the conferences and, you're probably going to be able to build on more business. And I may be going to the conferences more from a thought leadership, brand building, right? Yeah. And then you may have people that attend a conference and they're really like students of the conference, like you said earlier, right? Because they're just trying to build their skill set. So again, go-getters, you heard kind of 2 different lenses. But, keep in mind, you want to attend a conference based on what you need now and to really maximize it as opposed to what you'll need in the future, right? I think that's kind of the best way to go. So this is great. I don't know if you got any last thoughts before we close out on this piece.
No, I think, oh man, I love it when I'm still walking away still as a student. That's awesome. I'm happy. Thank you so much.
Oh, one question actually I wanted to get your thoughts on, because I go back and forth with my colleagues on this. What's the pro and con you think about attending a conference with a buddy? Like when I say a buddy, like a colleague or a coworker,
do you like a feel like wingman?
Yeah. Do you feel like it hurts or helps you from your perspective?
Personally, I'm going to put on my psychology background hat right now. I think it depends on the person you are and what you find you show up like at conferences. 10 years ago, heck, even more than that, I was an incredibly shy introvert. I'm actually an introvert. I mean, it's been a lot of training and self-awareness to get where I am today. But back in those days, having a wingman and a person with more experience and connections was great, right? Because they kind of led the way and helped role model a lot of things I wanted to learn and broke the ice for me. I've also seen the other extreme where having a wingman is great if you're like way too robust and way out there, and they help kind of like peel you back a little bit and help, temper the conversation. If you do it all by yourself, that's great too, as long as you have your confidence and you're ready to go and you're prepared. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here.
I would agree. It is definitely situational. And I like what you just said about it being, the type of person you are and how you show up. I really like that. I go back and forth on that one. To me, it's like some days I think it makes sense and some days it doesn't. But again, it depends on the conference and it goes back to the objectives, right? Like, What are you there for?
Well, I think it really comes back to, I think what we're both saying is, do you know why you're showing up and what your objectives are, and are you prepared?
Right. Awesome. Well, this is such a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, Tanya. If some of the go-getters are looking to connect with you, like maybe you can share, how they can get in contact with you, or what are some of your social media handles?
Absolutely. So as we mentioned earlier, I do have that group on Facebook called Black Sheep Consultants. On Twitter, I'm at Hi from Tanya with a Y. On LinkedIn, it's literally LinkedIn and then /TanyaStevenson.com, or whatever the end is for LinkedIn. And then for my website, you can go there as well. And I'm on there at www.TanyaStevenson.com. And it's Tanya with a Y and Stevenson with a V, as in Victor.
Awesome. And go-getters, I'll also include all the links that Tanya just shared with you. I'll include them in the show notes for this episode so you can have them and access them quickly. But again, this was such a great conversation. I had a lot of fun connecting with you today, Tanya.
Oh, thank you. Me too. I really appreciate just how it's a good time. And that's what ultimately I'm trying to make sure while I'm having this adventure as an independent consultant, is having fun along the way. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And go-getters, if you have a specific question or feedback, feel free to drop us a line at misimuseunplugged@gmail.com. I would again like to thank Tanya for being a guest on today's show. And thank you, my go-getters, for tuning in. This is Christy Lindor signing out for the Misi Muse Unplugged pop-up podcast. Here's to your journey to greatness.
Tune in every Friday for new episodes syndicated on iTunes, Google Play Music, and many more. Visit www.misimuse.com for more information.